Okay, so welcome back. This is the first of the Pentagon files that I'm exploring, and the release was on May 8th, 2026. So I've read through most of these, like pretty much all of them, and some of them are very wordy, like 200 pages plus long. But I find the really interesting one. Obviously, we've seen all the videos, the pictures. I'm pretty sure we've all kind of looked into this, but there's also the wordy accounts, the actual documentation, and this is what I find quite interesting in some of these. So this is kind of what this series is gonna be about, is presenting the more wordy documents to you. And sorry it's taken so long, but it's tricky. Is this is the part I find most interesting, but at the same time, it's knowing how to present it to you in not just a factual way, but an entertaining one as well. I've used a bit of AI on some of the videos to illustrate it. It's not great, but I'm sure I'll get better at presenting it. They're only little snippets, and I'm hoping to extend it and include a little bit more of the videos to illustrate what actually is going on in the reports. So this first episode deals with the 415th Night Fighter Squadron from World War II. You might recognise this as the Foo Fighters. It was quite renowned. I'm sure we've all heard of them. The band's fantastic as well. But the incident itself is from these Foo Fighters from World War II, and these were contained within these documents. I thought it was a good starting point because I kind of look at it as a bit of a ground zero for the modern era, and I'll go into that at the end. But initially, I just present it, and I won't present it from the very first page because there are quite a few pages in this. So I think there's it must be about 17 overall, but I'm gonna skip to page 11 of these documentations. The later ones are just speculation on what these could actually be. I think they settled on it could be some flares, but they were very reluctant to say we basically will call these flares, but we don't really believe that. In fact, I'll find that now. Okay, so here's the conclusion. Bomber command crews have for some time been reporting similar phenomena. A few of the alleged aircraft may have been ME-262. For the rest, flak rockets are suggested the most likely explanation. The whole affair is still something of a mystery, and the evidence is still very sketchy and varied, so that no definite and satisfactory explanation can yet be given. The ME-262 is actually the Meerschmitt ME-262. It's the world's first operational jet-powered aircraft. Like and subscribe and comment. Let me know if there's any way that you prefer this presented to you. If you've got any ideas on how to do that. As I say, the cases I'm going to go into are quite wordy, but they're very interesting, the data on there. So as I mentioned, I have used a bit of AI. It's not great. I'm hoping I get better at the AI. Just bear with me. I'm going to try and, as I say, introduce that a bit more, but here we go. So you can see this document's from the 11th of February 1945, but a lot of the reports attached are actually from the December of 1944. And it's been, obviously, this is addressed to the headquarters for the attention of Chief Technical Intelligence Officer, Colonel Bradley. So this has been pretty quickly escalated movement for this time period, given the larger situation at this time. Attached to the copies of the papers received from the first TAC, Air Force ADV, from the number of reports quoted in the second WIND from the 415th Night Fighter Squadron, it would seem that there must be something more than mere imagination behind the matter, and in view of the fact that the pilots and crews are becoming slightly worried by them, is considering that everything possible should be done to get to the root of the matter. Second IND apparently means second administrative forwarding of the document. Copies of the reports have been sent to the Air Ministry for their consideration, and the Scientific Investigation Division of this headquarters, Mr. Robertson, has also been asked to consider the problem. In the meantime, it is suggested that it might be as well for an Air Force Technical Intelligence Officer to visit the unit concerned and obtain reports and impressions at first hand from aircrew personnel. For the Deputy Supreme Commander, CM Grierson, Air Commodore AC of S, A2, Air Staff, SHAEF. Now, SHAEF is Supreme Headquarters of Allied Expeditionary Force. So, a few things to note here. Deputy Supreme Commander, CM Grierson, essentially Air Commodore, was a British officer, and in terms of his rank, he was very high ranking. Essentially, only fifth from the very top rank in the Air Force. Further to this, though, his position at AC of S is essentially the Assistant Chief of Staff for Intelligence, hence the A-2. In this situation, his position is just as important, if not more so, than his rank. 2, this is the 1st Tactical Air Force, Prov APO 374 US Army, reference to your 3rd endorsement on the subject of night phenomena originated by the 415th Night Fighter Squadron. There is no information at this headquarters which might explain the nature and cause of the lights and other phenomena described by the pilots of this squadron. The matter is therefore being referred to the Air Ministry in order to find out whether any further information can be obtained from that source. It is also hoped to make arrangements for an Air Technical Intelligence Officer from USSTAF to visit the unit concerned. The attention of the AC, Assistant Chief of Staff for the Intelligence. But forwarded for your information, this headquarters has no further information or explanation in connection with these phenomena. It is believed that further investigation is warranted since appropriate technical personnel are not available within the 1st Tactical Air Force. The matter is forwarded for such further investigation as may be advisable. And again, we see at the bottom the A-2, which designation means we're dealing with an intelligence branch. And again, the AC of S is the Assistant Chief of Staff, so essentially Assistant Chief of Staff for Intelligence. So also this was escalated to a senior rank such as Colonel C.A. Young, which he was actually the first black man to achieve the rank of colonel. Imagine how hard that must have been in that period of time. He was actually born into slavery and became a colonel in the US Army in World War II. Massive, well done. I mean, that is truly inspirational. That's phenomenal. So on to page 14. We'll get onto the account soon. Don't worry, the actual first-hand reports. So this is subject night phenomena to Commanding General 1st Tactical Air Force. The following is quoted from training and tactical information supplied by the 415th Night Fighter Squadron for the month of December 1944. We have encountered a phenomena which we cannot explain. Crews have been followed by lights that blink on and off or changing colours, etc. The lights come very close and fly formation with our planes. They are agitating and keep the crews on edge when they encounter them, mainly because they cannot explain them. It is requested further information be furnished on this subject, such as similar experiences of other night units. Further information is requested. Levitt Corning Jr., Lieutenant Colonel, GSC, Assistant Chief of Staff of Intelligence. And then it goes down further. There have been no instances reported as above. Before an investigation can be made, it will be necessary to have more complete information, such as the colours of the lights, their intensity, size, duration, and at what altitude seen. Also, if the lights are observed at any specific hours, do the subject lights cross Allied lines, and in what direction are they seen to travel? Also, it has been noted on what part of the aircraft they are carried, i.e. wing, tail, propeller, and how close do they approach our aircraft. Okay, so we can see then, here it goes into the reports. In compliance with paragraph 2 of first iteration of the document, I'm assuming, the following extract from the sortie reports of various pilots who have encountered the night phenomena are submitted for your information. So here are the reports. Night of the 14th to the 15th of December 1944, in vicinity of Erstein, V9381, flying at 1,000 feet, observed a large red light at 2,000 feet, going east at 1840 hours. Travelling at approximately 200 miles an hour. Second report, the night of the 16th to 17th December 1944, 20 miles north of Brasach, west 0173 at 800 feet, observed 5 or 6 flashing red and green lights in T-shape, thought they were flak. About 10 minutes later saw the same lights much closer and behind me. We turned port and starboard and the lights followed. They closed in to about 8 o'clock and 1,000 feet and remained in that position for several minutes and then disappeared. Okay, so a few things first. On that first one, it says 200 miles an hour. Now, the fighter jets back then, I believe, travelled about 500 miles an hour plus, and then the Spitfire is about 450. So it is slower than them, but then that makes it a bit of a weird speed. They're not flying like an aircraft near an enemy aircraft, because you would think that they would be flying a lot quicker, or avoidance or something like that. So they were just traveling at 200 miles an hour. as an approximate guess. The second one, we see again these red and green lights and they're described as a T shape. They thought they were a flag. Later on, they saw the same lights and they actually followed them. Now, and remained in the position for several minutes and then disappeared. Now, today we see these lights that are weird in the sky, and I suppose we kind of think that they're aircraft even now today. So it's kind of strange that they would have this very similar incident back then. That it's similar with these blinking lights. I'm thinking the New Jersey or sort of phenomena that happened, and people did see these kind of these lights, but according to this, they saw them back then as well. There has to be an element of skepticism about this because they're not really showing on these first-hand accounts. They're not really showing anything that is out of the ordinary. They could be described by a craft just not being seen or some lights on board a craft. There's no extreme speeds. They've not, so far in these statements, they've not mentioned anything which is totally out of the realms of possibility. Okay, so continuing. Night of 22nd to 23rd of December 1944, patrolling at Angels 10 from Sarasburg to Strasbourg, north and south of Highway. So Angels 10 is basically the altitude of 10,000 feet, I'm assuming. At 0600 hours, saw two lights coming towards AC from the ground. Upon reaching altitude of plane, they levelled off and stayed on my tail for approximately 2 minutes. Lights appeared to be large orange glow. After staying with AC for approximately 2 minutes, they would peel off and turn away, fly along level for a few minutes, and then go out. They appeared to be under perfect control at all times. Lights were seen somewhere in the vicinity of Hagenau. And again, that's getting into the realms of abnormality. It's just two lights that shot up to their altitude, cruised alongside the aircraft for 2 minutes, and then just peeled off and turned away. Now that is stretching into the strange. A flak wouldn't do that. Another aircraft, I'm sure they would have seen the other aircraft next to them, or they would have heard something. These pilots back then would have been used to seeing all sorts of aircraft flying in the air, and they would know about like certain turbulence and how lights and aircraft would fluctuate in relation to that. It says that they appear to be under perfect control at all times. So that's the assumption that they're not being affected by any turbulence or wind or anything that normal planes would be affected by. Night of the 23rd to the 24th of December 1944. Observed reddish coloured flames at considerable distance and at approximately 10,000 feet. Night of 23rd to 24th of December 1944, approximately 10 miles south of point X 06745, noticed to the northeast approximately 5 miles a glowing red object shooting straight up. Changed suddenly to plain view of AC doing a wing over and going into a dive and disappearing. That sudden directional change is something that we generally do see in like anomalous phenomena. So that's quite interesting. So the next one, night of 26th to 27th of December 1944, 0145 hours, saw two yellow streaks of flame flying at the same level at approximately 3,000 feet off port side. We also saw red balls of fire that stayed up for 10 seconds approximately 45 miles away. After seeing yellow streaks, made starboard vector, lost altitude, and streaks disappeared from view. Called CGI blunder and asked if EA enemy aircraft were in the vicinity. They answered no. Instructed to return to Angels 10, we felt what thought to be prop wash. Now, it's a very distinct. Prop wash is essentially it's a corkscrew effect from a propeller plane that causes it's like a turbulence issue. Noticed several group of lights off port while patrolling in vicinity of Q9050 and R1556. Lights made distinct lines, somewhat like arrows. Night of 26th to 27th of December 1944, while on Vector 090 near V7050, during patrol we observed airborne white lights. They were staggered evenly, vertically, and we could see from 1 to 4 at once. They appeared stationary at 10,000 feet. Night of 26th to 27th of December 1944, observed light at same altitude while in vicinity of Worms. Observer saw light come within 100 feet. peeled off and took evasive action, but light continued to follow for 5 minutes. Then light pulled up rapidly and went out of sight. Now that one's very interesting because this light comes within 100 feet and it's there for 5 minutes and then pulled up rapidly. So that's quite close proximity to see any movement or any other shape behind this object. You know, these people are the night flyers, so their eyes would be finely attuned to the nighttime. And so, whilst perhaps the rest of us might struggle with, you know, when you're nighttime pilots at this sort of skill set in this kind of period in time, they would be finely tuned. If 100 feet, I'm assuming if there was some sort of aircraft there behind that, they would have noticed at least something, or you know, noted perhaps some turbulence. Again, you're dealing with pilots that are specialists in this sort of things, and they're not just doing trial runs. These would be out all the time. You know, this was kind of frontline territory. Night of December 27th to 28th, 1944, while a north heading in patrol area noticed vicinity of 01378, lights suspended in air moving slowly and would then disappear. Were orange in colour, lights appeared singularly and in pairs. Observed these lights 4 or 5 times during the period. Night of the 27th to 28th of December 1944, 8 miles northeast of Luneville at 1910 hours, saw 3 sets of 3 lights, red and white. One on starboard and one on port from 1,000 feet to 2,000 feet to rear and closing in at Angels 10, so 10,000 altitude in feet. Pulled up to Angels 8 and lights went out. Called Churchman to see if there was anything in the area, received a negative reply. Night of 30th to 31st of December 1944, saw a group of lights flying through the air 30 or 40 miles east of base while flying at Angels 9 to 10. Night of 1st to the 2nd of January 1945, saw Foo Fighters north of Strasbourg and north of Severn. So they've just introduced, they've got their own terminology for these now, that they see them so regular that they've named them Foo Fighters. Night of the 14th to the 15th of January 1945, observed a large orange glow in sky approximately 5 foot in diameter in vicinity of Ingwiller at 6,000 feet at 2000 hours. Night of the 29th to the 30th of January 1945, about 010 hours, sighted a Foo Fighter about halfway between Wissembourg and Landau. Foo Fighter was off to the starboard and rear at Angels 2. Lights were amber and one was 20 to 50 feet above the other and about 30 seconds duration. Foo Fighter was about 1,000 feet away and following. The lights were about a foot in diameter. Lights disappeared when Travel 34 turned into them. So that's quite interesting that they've labelled it as about a foot in diameter, these lights, and as soon as they've turned into them, they've disappeared. And it goes on to state, in every case where pilot called GCI control and asked if there was a bogey aircraft in the area, he received a negative answer, and that's by FB Ringwald, Captain AC Intelligence Officer. So, and it says at the bottom as well, you can see there, Foo Fighters is the name given to these phenomena by combat crews of this squadron. Bear in mind, we're dealing with the pilots. I put in a clip there, a little photo of the pilots in the training. And so these used to kind of avoid the daylight and used to do loads of practical training for night vision and stuff like that. And they would have avoided light so many minutes before to increase their vision. So their vision at night was a lot better than any of ours. They were specifically trained for night pilots, and this is kind of why they kept them separate, so that they could adapt their vision. On the date in question, we can see, looking at the full moon on the full moon colour 1944, around this time on Friday the 29th of December, it was a full moon. Now, that would increase your vision even further. So these had actually better vision than what they normally would when they were spotting these. Further to this, if we actually look at the weather in the area, I've only had to approximate to a nearest place. So here's the temperature graphs, the hourly temperature. And look at the cloud cover. So we've got a cloud cover here. The grey is the cloud and the white is not. So you can see, basically, from the 24th, from the 23rd, 24th, right up till the 30th, it's clear. There's next to no cloud cover. And I mean, obviously be some, but next to none. And if you scroll further down and see the observed weather at that point in time as well, as you go through, the grey is a slight fog in the morning and a little bit of drizzle. But again, the ground fog, if it's only a slight ground fog, it wouldn't mean this fog above, because the planes would deliberately fly above the fog and cloud cover. But these seem to be quite clear. Yeah, so looking at this, all the way from the 24th onwards, 23rd onwards, you've got decent moon cover. So you've got that light from the moon with the clear sky. That would increase visibility massively for these pilots who are trained to fly in pilots and the crew that are trained to fly in a lot darker conditions than this. So if there was a plane behind these lights, I'm fairly certain, given that there was not much cloud cover and they had the full moon, they would have spotted this. They would have spotted a plane, surely. So I think that kind of opens it up to being that kind of, it's more on the anomalous range than something which can be just easily explained. So the thing we have to remember is that World War II was literally seen as a battle of all battles. So everything was thrown at it from all sides. Also, a lot of information is known about the technology and the development at this time. It's almost as a bragging right in hindsight, like, oh, you know, about you've got the hydrogen bomb, certain things, the jet aircraft, numerous things like this. It's a really good, it's a brilliant marker point for human technology, almost like a ground zero, as it were. You know, we know the advances of the era. All right, we might be slightly in the dark about certain things, but not massively. Certainly not to the point of defying modern day physics, you know, especially back then, or with extreme maneuverability, with no propulsion, in such small objects that they say about a foot in diameter. And apologies for like the AI ratio in some of the lights and the AI graphics there. I will get better. I've done this quickly just to get this out there. But looking into these objects were generally reported, so not just within these reports, generally they were observed as metallic balls about 1 to 3 feet when observed quite close to the planes. And these are the reports that matter the most, as they're the closest approach with more reliable data. So these balls, 1 to 3 feet, do they sound familiar? And I get it, you know, we're thinking the bugosphere here, but I get it. It's there's a reason to be skeptical of this and its reliability. You know, is it a hoax or that kind of thing? I'm skeptical of the bugosphere, and I think it's more probable that for it to be a hoax. But what isn't deniable is the fact that these strange basketball-like spheres are being seen all over the world. Whether the bugosphere is kind of a genuine article of this, or whether it's someone who's kind of recreated it as maybe some sort of art thing, as a hoax or something like that. Either way, it has been seen, these metal spheres, which are about a basketball size. And they were seen back then as well. They're not a new phenomena. In fact, throughout history, it doesn't take much digging to find accounts of these throughout history. From modern day pilots to farmers, seafarers, I mean, the Nuremberg celestial phenomena, and further back. All right, these were described differently, but they wouldn't be described the same. You know, what is described now as a UFO was once a flying saucer. Before that, it was a metallic shield, when you go back far enough, or a star, or an angel, or something along those lines. It's just, as society changes, so does our reference points. Nowadays, people don't see the angels, and they wouldn't really reference a shield, because that's not relevant to us in modern times. And, you know, even going back hypothetically, and to something along the lines of people used to see angels and were given messages. Now they get abducted, you know, which it's kind of strange. Ironically, when you look into the accounts of such things like angels, irrespective of each of our personal beliefs, I should state I'm agnostic, though. That's just for any bias, but the account of such things of angels are strangely similar to abductions. Even how such the theoretical angels are described, the physical description sometimes that people say they're shocks or something like that throughout history. Whether you look at this as pure imagination, some perhaps like, I don't know, maybe something caused by vitamin deficiency or schizophrenia, hallucination, I don't know. But there are certainly loads of accounts of these, and there's also accounts of, as I say, flying shields, and that kind of thing. And I do think perhaps that's just maybe some way of people describing it back then due to their frame of reference compared to modern day times. I've distracted somewhat from the point though, from the case at hand. And I probably will go into that at one point, because I have looked at historical sort of accounts, and it's very interesting, you know, because you've got to take that element of our society has shifted, so our point of reference will be different to back then. But you can look at certain things and think, well, you know, is this actually what they meant? And they didn't have any other way to describe it back then. But anyway, the point I'm making is that at this point in time, about the World War II era, this is like patient zero, as it were. From hindsight, the technology and the path of the technological advancement was very traceable. And there was a clear marker at where we stood in terms of understanding engineering and the sciences at this point in time. Now, as time has progressed and things like the Secrecy Acts, black projects, government secrecy from spies and internal leaks, and the desire to be the most technologically advanced nation, this path has gotten a bit murkier, and it's closer to our current time, where we're not entirely sure what is in the realms of plausibility, engineering and physics wise for these black projects that they're working on. So perhaps that's why so many people believe something else is going on, is that subconsciously we pick up on these factors. Like it's like how intuition works. Just reading the microdata and our brains piece it together and says, this doesn't make sense. But perhaps, you know, there's a valid reason for this. Maybe the validation lies in why there is so much secrecy still in relative peacetime compared to, you know, past wars like World War II. Maybe it's something else. I mean, ultimately, if these accounts are taken at face value, and you have to remember, even something like the size of a basketball flying at 200 miles per hour back then, with some reports like no means of propulsion, is well beyond the technology of the time, let alone the observations, say, about the propulsion, the lights, the metallic surface. A metallic object just in a spherical shape with no propulsion traveling at those speeds back then. I mean, we couldn't figure out how to do it now, so let alone back then. And also, both sides reported seeing these as well. It's not just one. And they both thought it was the other side's technology. So what do you think? You know, what do you think about the escalation to the highest ranks in this thread? And don't forget, that's just in this thread. It's not the documents. There's only so many that's been released. Who knows what other escalations are in the documents that's waiting to be released or that will never get released. So in my next video, I'm going to skip forward because there's a very interesting account involving an FBI agent and a police deputy that I want to cover. Hopefully I can do the AI animations a bit better, because that they were pretty awful. And they'll probably be a bit longer. I was kind of playing around with it there a little bit. But thanks for watching. Like and subscribe and comment and let me know what you think about all this. It'd be interesting to hear everyone's opinion on it.